All right. Excuse me. Hello, all. It is right at the top of the hour. We will give folks just a moment here to file in and find the links among all the other emails and everything else. But just want to say welcome to you all. My name is Josh Hadro. I'm the managing director of the IIIF Consortium. I work with Glenn Robson and Caitlin Perry to support the work of community groups like this and to put on events like this that you're attending this week. So welcome back if you've been with us for some of the previous events that we've done today, or if you're just joining us, welcome. Thanks for coming along and for your interest in design and UX as it intersects with the IIIF ecosystem. So what I am going to do is stop sharing my screen. I wanted to give just that opening welcome, but really this session is going to be the work and product and showcase of that design community group. So what I will do first is hand it over to Ben Bakelar and Stacy Reddick, to the co-chairs of that group, and then they can introduce kind of the content and the panelists and showcase folks of the session. So if you need anything, just let us know in the chats or raise your hand, and we're happy to help. Yeah, and thanks again for joining, and take it away, Stacy and Ben.
All right, thanks everyone. Hey, my name is Ben Bakelar. I am one of the co-chairs for the Design Community Group, which was formerly labeled Design for Humans. And so today we want to run a interactive presentation panel session just to go over a few things about the Design Community Group. So the name of our group, Design, refers to principles within the fields, all these various fields: information architecture, usability, user experience, human-centered design, interaction design. Perhaps you could come up with a few more variations on the practice as well. So we're welcoming of all design perspectives. And we've recently updated our group charter, which you can find on the main website. And we've recentered around these primary goals. So one of our goals is to conduct research, and that's what happened a couple of years ago when we did the UX personas, and I'll have a little promo about those. We'd like to review current IIIF interfaces, so that's one of the things we do at our monthly meetings. We have a goal to test potential user experiences, which we'd love to find some examples to help do some testing. We would like to generate recommendations, and we finally have some publications up on the new website, so we'll mention those as well. And in general, just inspire design-centered solutions within the IIIF community. So you can find our personas guide, which was really it's the summary of the keynote presentation from the 2021 online conference, in which we identified these 4 kind of archetypes or personas. They could certainly use continued attention and development. So they're not a static thing, and all of the work we do in design is always iterative. We do have an icon usage publication pending. We'll publish it in the guides section, which was related to some survey work that was done, I think also back in 2021. So today, this is really a design review, I think would be the right name for it. Our goal is to give everyone the opportunity to think through and share ideas about how interface design can affect the user experience and how the community can work towards more consistent user experiences across different IIIF-enabled platforms. So on the one hand, we have a lot of creativity and innovation happening to advance how IIIF can be used. And that the other tail end, when users encounter IIIF, it would be ideal if they had a similar consistent experience across multiple platforms, so they already know what to do. And so today we've invited 3 presenters to bring their project and some item for discussion, a design problem, a UI, UX challenge, something that we can all take a look at and kind of share our thoughts about. And we've pulled together a panel. So Stacy Reddick, who's also a co-chair of the design group, and the Brumfields, who I don't think need much of an introduction, but they'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves. So before we begin, I'm just gonna have this up anytime it's back on my screen. We need your participation. We request your participation. Please feel free to use the chat. Please do use the chat to submit your thoughts, comments, and questions as the presentations are going on. And at the end of the presentations, the panelists will respond and also, parse through the chat and pull out salient comments and things that are useful to bring up. All right, so I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Matt Jordan, who, if you were just here for the prior hour, you saw his lightning talk. And I think he'll be talking about one of the components that he kind of showed in that. So Matt, I believe you can just go ahead and share screen, and I'll go ahead and stop. And if you can also unmute yourself. There you go. Are you able to share?
Yeah, hold on one second. You can't start video because all right.
Cannot start video.
I cannot start video, yes.
Sorry about that. Try it now. I've loosened the settings a little.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be seeing a picture of my daughter. So yeah, I'm Matt Jordan. I'm a developer at Northwestern University Libraries, and I'll be talking today about our digital collections redesign that is really revolving around IIIF presentation API. So I'll do let me swapping back and forth, sort of a mixed bag presentation between a slideshow and an actual demo on the browser. So for that reason, I'm just going to share my screen and not go full view on the presentation.
Matt, I'll give you a timer alert for 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah. First, thanks for having me on the panel. If you had a chance to watch the lightning talk earlier, some of this content might cover the ideas there. But this is really going to be more on the discussion of the merits of the front-end choices that we have made, specifically around the use of IIIF as the primary data model for driving our digital collections, and even more specifically around using a manifest to represent a page on a digital collections website. If you have not had the chance to watch that lightning talk, please do. Entering 2022, Northwestern University Libraries was sort of taking this path to redesign our digital collections website. And previously, our IIIF, on our older version of our website, we were using manifests, but they're really just more using them as a viewer within the page. Our manifests were not very robust. They didn't have a lot of metadata in them. We didn't really produce IIIF collections. This next version of our digital collections website is going to use the IIIF manifest as the primary data model for driving an item page within our digital collections website. And for that reason, we now have metadata in those manifests, and we also have IIIF collections surrounding those manifests. So this is sort of an idea of what it used to look like. We had just sort of used the manifest for the viewer at the top of the page, and everything below that viewer, that data for rendering this page was not coming from a manifest. It's coming from some other data source, from some non-IIIF model. And for that reason, that same manifest that was rendering that viewer at the top of the page didn't have a lot of metadata. This is that same manifest inside of Mirador. And you can sort of see it has a label or a title, and it has a description or a summary. but it doesn't really have much else there to it, and really just acted more of a sort of a container for collecting all of our different canvases representing our file sets for our different items. This is a similar manifest, sort of a newer version of our manifest that you can now sort of see that we have metadata over here. So this is a manifest that is a little bit more robust in the wild, and is more representative of that same item on our digital collection site that we'll be rendering. So we knew that we needed to make these manifests stronger and more representative for items heading into the redesign. We did not know that we would be using these manifests as our primary data model, but we did fill them with everything we might want for a user to see at a glance. So now in our redesign, that manifest is now rendering sort of the canvas items component here at the top, which we're calling Clover. And then down below, we're using that same manifest that we already have and that we've already requested from its manifest ID. And we're taking the manifest label and rendering it right here. We're taking the manifest summary and outputting that right below that label. And then we're sort of just spilling out the rest of the descriptive properties according to presentation API that might be in that manifest below that. And we felt that we didn't necessarily need to have this, we didn't necessarily need to go both routes, having just the manifest walked into a viewer at the top of the page, that if we made our manifest strong enough, they could represent the full page. And the reason why we felt this is that we sort of said, you know, if a manifest can represent an object in the wild and present it to researchers or whoever, and it would be help describe that thing, maybe not in full, but present that thing, then should we not be able to represent the same web page, sort of mirror that idea back onto us? So to represent that manifest onto the web page for our providing institutions digital collections website. This idea is not really new. Sort of been discussed in the past by Tom Crane of Digerati as sort of the exploded, I cannot remember what he called it. I think it was just exploded manifest, but it's the idea that you can publish a real web page for every object, that it must be an HTML page with an actual web address, and then that you can use JavaScript or other interactions on top of that HTML to create a viewer-like experience. So that is what we have done here. I'll make this a little bit larger. Put this out of the way. And you can sort of see that we have a viewer right here where the user can sort of toggle between these different canvases. And this is the items within this manifest. The label here, summary again. We do sprinkle in non-IIIF elements throughout. I can get into that in a minute. And then down below, we sort of render out these related items viewers. All of this, everything referencing either a item, this specific item, or these items is delivered through IIIF. And the output here of these is actually through a IIIF collection. That I'll walk through each one of these. So this is the manifest that we were just looking at, rendering this page. It's a bunch of JSON. You don't actually need to look at it, but you can sort of see very quickly contributor, date, etc. That's that same output that would be putting this manifest into that website. And so you can sort of see it inside of our IIIF viewer. That looks fine. But then also you can sort of see it within this sort of tool that we have sort of developed to the side called Nectar, which just sort of outputs those properties to the page very easily. And then going back to this example of these sliders down here, we're using a IIIF collection to render that. So each one of these things are just sort of a micro component within the website that takes a IIIF resource or a property within that IIIF resource and outputs it to the screen. So, so some of the benefits to this are real. Organizations like us are forced to create more robust manifests for presentation to the front end, and it'll prove out the quality of those manifests against a user interface. Developers like me now can create UI components that are interoperable, and other developers can use those things. We're not just sort of creating developers for our own digital collections websites anymore. We can develop components that we can use together. And what that will do is we can begin innovating our UIs together as a community, not just the viewers that are locked into that are locked into an area of the screen, but maybe our whole screens or parts of our screens. It's not without challenges, though. Sometimes the UIs that we dream up have requirements that don't match the shape of a presentation API. And we found that out the hard way, that maybe makes the process a little bit slower, but it also makes you have to do things a little bit more deliberate, which is actually a good thing, I think. And then, that you have to sort of come across things like, what if you don't want everything in your IIIF manifest? You have to sort of find a different avenue for delivering that data to the front end. So again, I just want to say thanks to my colleagues. And then finally, to sort of ask a final question, how can mirroring a manifest to your page be beneficial to users, both within your web presence and for those viewing your manifest in the wild? And then what are some challenges that maybe we haven't thought of? Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Matt. So, right, the question there is, what is that user's experience? How is it different, perhaps, when they're using a manifest, and what are the implications of the, how the manifests are generated and populated in order to drive that UI? Are there components that are desired in the UI that can't be contained in the manifest, for instance, right? So there's a whole host of questions there. What we're going to do is, and yeah, go ahead and everyone, please add some questions as well, comments, thoughts, and we're going to go right through all three presentations before we get to the panel and group discussion. So I'll pause for 1 second while we get Leander queued up and ready. And if anyone can think of any UX questions to contribute, that's great. And so our second presenter, I think everyone knows him, Leander Saiga. Thank you, Leander. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'd like to share my thoughts on user interfaces and IIIF, and I'd like to start with the struggle we all know when it comes to deal with IIIF manifest links. The users we want to use IIIF, the people, the scholars, the artists who we want to use IIIF have to learn so many things, so many technological things about IIIF before they can even start to work with it. They have to think about metadata. They have to deal with these cryptic manifest links, and they have to learn to distinguish between actual links to IIIF manifest, those cryptic JSON files, or maybe IIIF based viewers. And it seems like every portal out there does it differently. Some provide IIIF icons and you find yourself in a IIIF based mirror door, and somehow viewer, and somehow you have to recognize it and know where to search, where to look for the actual IIIF link, and you have to know what to do with it. And sometimes you don't have even an idea that IIIF may be available here, and there are many options and menu items, and you need to know that in this example, for instance, you have to click a larger image, and then there is a IIIF icon, but it doesn't lead you to a IIIF whatever thing, it just opens another menu. And now you don't need to click the IIIF icon, but the info icon, and there goes the metadata panel. And finally, if you manage to scroll down, you find a text box with a IIIF link in it, and you need to know that you have to copy this thing and paste it into another viewer in your IIIF-based tool that you have to have somewhere. And yeah, that's the problem I often face, and I think it even starts with the name IIIF. You have to explain what it actually means, and most people confuse it with IEEE. And yeah, I think there are many. It has been recognized by the community already long ago now that there are problems or there are issues with usability. And I like to add one small additional approach, a technological approach. And it's the approach I already presented at the IIIF conference earlier this year. It's the Detektiv browser extension. This is an extension that was originally invented to discover IIIF resources in web pages. So it already tries to solve some of the problems I emphasized at the beginning of this talk. It makes it easier to find actual IIIF resources and lists them nicely in such a typical browser plug-in panel. And it's even possible to collect those resources in your basket and then send them over to your IIIF-based application. But of course, this also needs some infrastructural things to be prepared in order to work. So I'd like to share a new idea I've been following for some time now, but it has not been implemented yet. But I want to share this idea with you. The idea is to actually integrate a IIIF viewer like Mirador directly in the browser plugin, so people do not have to have a server providing a Mirador viewer, but the Mirador could start right out of the plugin just in a new browser tab. I already managed to build a proof of concept for this, but as Mirador still depends on outdated versions of React and Material UI, it's not possible to really implement it at this time, because Mirador needs a major upgrade, I think, before you can start working on such things. However, if it's possible to implement this, then I think it could become completely obsolete to copy and paste URIs manually. So scholars do not have. Actually, it's good if they know how it works and what URIs are, but they really do not have to deal with these details anymore. They just can add their resources into the basket and send it directly to the Mirador, or even remove it from the Mirador just with some generic UI elements, and you do not have to copy and paste IIIF manifests anymore. Yeah, well, that's the idea. And as soon as Mirador gets updated in its core, then maybe it could be possible to implement this. And then it would be even possible, for instance, to create annotations in your serverless plug-in based Mirador and store these annotations in the cloud of your browser vendor, whichever company it is. And to add another small detail, I'm not aware of a standardized API for annotation servers. So if there is one, it would be nice if you could point me to it. But I think it does not exist yet. But if there would be such an API, then it could be possible to provide users with a configuration option in Mirador, so they can attach and detach their Mirador from to and from different annotation stores. So they could, for instance, attach their Mirador to their institutional university annotation store or whatever they may like to use. So this would also overcome this vendor related issue, which is on this slide here. So it could become vendor independent finally. So that's the idea. The idea is to use browser plugins to deal with the technological details of IIIF and to provide the user with a unified user interface which overcomes all the copy and paste and URI IIIF issues. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Leander. Yeah, so I think this idea of how can users take advantage of the IIIF materials and use them is kind of central to your project. What is that experience? Not just of viewing it, but of using it beyond the view. All right, and so for presentation number 3, we have Rositza and Mia from British Libraries. I think you guys are here.
Yes, so hello, hi everyone. So Mia's just joined us and we've got Sandra Tappen as well and Adam Tovel. So it will be a shared kind of presentation and really just a much simpler problem, sort of how to improve our share options on the universal viewer that we use at the library. So I'm just going to post a link to the document that we kind of started working on just to, and I'll share my screen as well, just to kind of set the context and pose some questions and some links to items that you can open in your on your machines as well. So I think this is it. So I can see what I'm sharing. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Just the document, yeah.
It's your document, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so myself, and Mia, we're in the digital research team at the British Library. Sandra Tappen is the Heritage Made Digital Program Manager, and her team is ingesting a lot of digitized content and digitizing content to be made available in the Universal Viewer. And we've got Adam Tovel, who is leading on the development of our Universal Player module, which will be launched next year. And we've been working with the Universal Viewer since 2016. It's gone through several kind of upgrades, and we're currently working on upgrading it to version 4 of the Universal Viewer. And we haven't upgraded to the latest APIs for components of the IIIF. I notice we're using version 2 of the presentation API at the moment, but once we upgrade to version 4 of the Universal Viewer, we should be using more recent ones. We're obviously working with the Open Collective as well and various companies to improve the functionality. And so it's the universal viewer, I stole this from the lovely resources page of the IIIF consortium. It's a popular universal viewer for the national cultural heritage institutions, and displays a variety of different IIIF presentations. The current universal viewer that the British Library Universal Viewer gives access to over 500,000 collection items. They're not easy to discover. You have to search for them in our various catalogs, or using spreadsheets and key terms and codes, which we make available via this collection guide on our website. We also want to pose some questions around our share options. So currently we have a share button within which we have got a URL that gives that links to the, a URL link for the current view that's displayed. We also have a citation as part of our metadata in the panel to the right of the universal viewer. And we've got the IIIF logo, which is quite hidden within the share button. So our question is sort of, how do people want to use the share options, what kind of share options they want to use, how we should be making those available, what labels we should be attributing to those. And in terms of how do people make make sense of what the various URLs take them to, whether it's the item, whether it's the view, whether it's the canvas, whether it's the manifest. So we're posing various questions around the share functionality on the IIIF viewer. This is just a screenshot of beautiful item of a design for a Japanese kimono. As you can see, the share option is at the bottom of the screen. There is a link to the citation to the item in the panel to the right. And once people click on the the share button, they can copy and share the link to the view, the current view, and the IIIF logo is available here. It's grayed out, and it needs to be double clicked on, or copy and paste the link by right clicking on it to open the manifest itself. We were going to talk about download options, but they're quite complicated. We're still they're affected a little bit by the various projects to improve our infrastructure at the moment. I've got some links here, and the first one is the music score manuscript, and I wonder whether Sandra wants to share her screen and just demonstrate the share functionality.
Yeah, thanks, Rositza. If you just close yours down, then I will share my screen. Thank you.
New share. Sorry, no, I need to stop sharing. Stop share. There we go.
Great, thanks. Okay, so can you see my music score on the screen? Someone can confirm. Yeah, thanks. So this is an example of one of our music manuscripts from the British Library. It's Bach's Preludes and Fugues, Book 2, which we've got the autograph original manuscript for. And as Rositza said, we've got buttons down here with various actions, the share one being one of the key ones. And as Rositza said, at the moment, we've just got the one option. To share, you'd have to basically click on the link to highlight it and then copy and paste it into your browser. But what I don't think is particularly clear to our users is that that link will vary depending on how you've interacted with the item. So if you zoomed in on the item to look at a small detail, and then you click on the share, although it says to share this item, if you then copy that particular URL and put that into another window, then you would get the link would take you to that particular zoomed in part of the page. So we were wondering whether there were better ways of doing this. Should we offer more than one option to share the item and then perhaps just share the view. If we were to do something like that, that would kind of reflect what we're doing already with the download option, where you can download the whole image or the current view. So those are already there as options. So we were just wondering whether doing something similar with share to give people that option of seeing much more clearly what kind of thing they could share. And yeah, then as Rositza said, the IIIF logo, it's a bit hidden away there. It's not really that clear what you can do with it, but if you click on it, you do get taken to the manifest. Thank you.
And we had some other examples there, including some screenshots from the audiovisual content. So Adam, do you want to show these screenshots and explain them? Thank you.
I could probably share my screen as well, if that's helpful, to see them live. Look. Presumably you can all see that.
Yes.
Yes, good. So yeah, very similar, but also similar issues, I think, Sandra, to what you were talking about in terms of share. So this is just the universal viewer in its full or expanded mode, displaying some AV content. So down the left-hand side here, you've got a manifest that has a bunch of ranges that describe recordings. And on the right-hand side, you've got the metadata pane, and you can move through the recordings to select the thing you want to listen to. Again, the share function is down there, but the share function essentially shares the item, i.e. the top level from the manifest, not the particular recording. But also, I think amongst users of AV, there is an expectation, like you would have on YouTube now, to be able to share a specific point within a recording, particularly if you are dealing with recordings that are many hours long. So can we offer those similar sort of options to what Sandra was showing in terms of download, by specifying time points within the AV to be able to share, so that it directs people to particular points in the audio. I think there are also potentials here for sharing on social media, etc. You have things like Twitter cards, which are obviously very beneficial, particularly to sharing small parts of AV content. And is there an appetite for that? Does that fit within e.g. the manifest? So that's really what you're seeing in the full version of the player. It becomes slightly more complicated by the fact that we have a smaller version of the viewer, our mini version, which is just in a templated page here. This is just displaying a single recording from the same manifest that you've seen there. So the share function as it is will share a top level, which will actually, if you tried to share that, would not take you to this specific recording because it's trying to share the top level of the manifest. So there's a fundamental issue there. But same goes, you know, this is this share function is relatively basic and needs work. We don't have the IIIF manifest share enabled there, but you're just seeing this in a test environment. We certainly could if we wanted to. So yeah, I think similar issues from AV, perhaps a little bit more fundamentally problematic with this mini constricted range version of the player.
Thanks, Adam. Mia, did you want to add anything?
Only that one reason we've been slightly stymied is lack of resources, and also various internal architecture issues that we had in 2016. But also wanting to understand people's actual sharing behaviors as opposed to things that we think they might want to do. Like, for example, I know that you can share things to a particular time moment in YouTube videos, but a lot of other people don't know that. So how much should we invest in allowing people to do super nerdy things versus the kind of most common path? And the question of what do people expect to share, I think, is the hard thing that we don't have data on. Do they expect to share view that the link will open to on a particular canvas, a particular level of Zoom, or do they expect to share the item as a whole and open it at some kind of like top level view?
Thank you. That's us.
All right, thank you all so much. It's really interesting how these, how there's a connection I see between all of these. So now I'm going to invite the panel to introduce themselves and provide some initial, thoughts and responses, and then we'll open it up to the community and the audience at large. Stacy.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So I'm Stacy Reddick. I'm another co-chair of the design community group. I thank you all for sharing these. They're so interesting. I love to see all of the things that are going on. And I do really enjoy hearing the questions that you all have about how your users interact with things, because that's what I do in my day job. So overall, it sounds like I have two sort of major takeaways, and they're not really answers as much as they are just observations. But the first thing I would say is that Matt, you and Leander seem to be talking about two very different audiences. So Matt, you're talking about somebody who's just coming to your digital collections website and wants to see the image and wants to see the metadata, and like that's all they need to know. But Leander, you're talking about somebody who knows what IIIF is, knows what the symbol means, knows where to find it, can work with browser plugins, all of those things. So it sounds to me like you're looking for answers for somebody who is a little bit more advanced in their understanding of IIIF specifically, and also just like how the internet works. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is that I think consistency is one of the UX heuristics. So it's important to have internal and external consistency. Internal is like consistency across things within your realm, and external is consistency with things outside of your realm in other places on the internet. And Matt, your system is doing something good in that it is providing more consistency between the different places people will go to view your materials. So with the same metadata being copied over from the manifest into the collections platform and being shared and not being very different, that's providing the same consistency. So it doesn't really matter where they go to find it. So if they do end up on the within a viewer, they won't get to your page somehow and be confused about what's there because it's different. And then at the British libraries, this consistency, I think the external consistency might be a little bit of the challenge that you're experiencing, because there are things that people are doing outside of your websites and platforms that you haven't really managed to do yet. And so that's what you're trying to look for. You're trying to look for like, how do we meet this expectation that people have with like the general experience on the internet? And really, really, like, this is a smaller point. One of the things you suggested is having two options for downloading the current view and the whole image. And then this consistency rule also applies for that, because you've got the consistency. If you do that, you're already doing it with downloads. And so you're providing a little bit more of that consistency for the people who use your things.
If Stacy and Ben aren't going to introduce us, I'll introduce us ourselves. I'm Sarah Brumfield.
I'm Ben.
And we've been teaching, implementing, consulting in the IIIF world for about 7 years now. Most of our time now is actually focused on From the Page, our crowdsourcing and collaborative editing platform for transcription and description and indexing, and it both consumes IIIF and produces IIIF. Our perspective is very much as software developers, but because we've built a platform that has many end users that are retirees, rural retirees even, we spend a lot of time thinking about kind of easiest paths and how to keep people from getting frustrated and confused and bailing because they're volunteers. So that's kind of shapes a lot of our perspective on this type of work. I had two kind of conceptual ideas I wanted to put forth, and then we can, have more of a conversation that I think about the specific project. So one is, unless you're the sort of person who is on this call, you should never see a IIIF manifest. You should never get to the point where you're looking at JSON. I think you should, it would be wonderful if there was a subset of people who understand that this is a useful thing. And this is the metaphor I use when I'm talking to digital humanists, historians and English professors and documentary editors about IIIF, is that a IIIF manifest is a football, be it round or oblong, that you use to pass this item between systems. And so if you use that as a metaphor in your head, then we can start asking questions like, what is the easiest way to make this item passable between the digital library system and a transcription system and a publication system? So that's one of the ways that I think about this.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of agree with Sarah. And one of the things that I noticed kind of follows up on what Stacy said, this kind of differentiation between simple use cases and more complex use cases, rather than perhaps beginner and advanced. I think that, Matt, what Northwestern has done does a great job of solving all of these very simple cases. And I think that what Leander and the British Library especially are struggling with is this balance of how do you make reuse simple? So Leander, one of the things that I thought about when you were presenting your suggestions for developments to DetectIF was that, knowing that someone who has installed that as a browser plugin is already pretty advanced. You can prompt them to do more complex things, but you also, one of those complex things might be sharing the IIIF content in an easy way with someone who's not as advanced. So one of my more concrete suggestions was that perhaps instead of launching Mirador internally within someone's web browser, within the Chrome extension, having DetectIF be able to look for IIIF manifests and then send them to an online visible viewer, whether it's Mirador or UV, one of the places where you could just pass that URL to someone who doesn't know anything about this, and you're pointing them to the content that you've seen, possibly the content you've annotated in a simple format, could be really powerful. And because you are already doing this detective work to look at the different sources of IIIF manifests on these different content providers, you could present this in a way that's a little bit simpler and bring in other viewing options, right? Bring in options for other viewers that are less well known than UV or Mirador, that might be perfect options for people, but they're not seeing them because the connection between the viewer developed at Göttingen and a IIIF manifest at the British Library may not be obvious. I was also wondering the same thing with the British Library use case, in which it seems like there are these very simple use cases, and then there's much more complex use cases. And unfortunately, it's really hard to define the difference between, which is simple or complex. I want to share the thing I'm looking at right now, or I want to share the item of which the thing I'm looking at right now is just a part.
But I think that goes back to Stacy's point about what do people expect based on the internet. But yeah.
So those are my kind of initial impressions.
All right. Thank you so much. This is really developing into a super interesting conversation, I think. Are there any responses from Matt or Leander or the British Libraries?
I just want to say thank you. And I really appreciate the breakdowns. Especially as far as like the consistency that we're striving for. I don't think that was necessarily the initial goal of what we were trying to do by mirroring the manifest to the webpage. I think it was more of just a ease of use for us. And I think it just became a thing along the way. and that it was one of those things where we knew we were going to make our manifest more robust and heavier with metadata, and to strive to use the descriptive and linking properties wherever possible to sort of extend out our manifests. I'm speaking presentation 3 API here. And then we also knew we were doing a redesign. We could have done that redesign without using those manifests to drive that data. And we maybe could have come up with a front end that looked exactly the same. But I think at some point, we could have like tried to mirror that, but there would have been maybe a tendency or a possibility that a fork in the road moment could happen in the future, where the manifest and the representation on our webpage would sort of start to differ at some point again. And I think this sort of forces us to sort of stay in alignment with it, and allows people in the research world or otherwise who are ingesting our manifests or taking them elsewhere to be able to do so with ease and with the understanding that they're there.
I think
Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing for us is that really we did the initial UX work on the viewer in 2015 and 16, and there weren't so many options there weren't that many cool things to do with the IIIF manifest at the time, so it was kind of okay that it was hidden away, but we really want people to use our manifests in Exhibit and open it in Mirador and compare items and do like all the wonderful things that you can do. So it kind of like caught up with us, it snuck up on us from behind. And I think absolutely thinking about consistency between the download and share options, to understand the different ways in which people want to use things. And we were hoping that we could have Google Analytics tagging to sort of really understand which features people used more than others, but that has proved complex. We do know that some people spend hours and hours and hours on single items, so that they are probably quite analogous, more analogous than we expected to reading room use, traditional reading room use.
I want to invite Glenn Robson, the Community Technical Coordinator, to just add in some comments about IIIF content state before we continue. You there, Glenn?
Sorry, I was really enjoying the conversation. Yeah, so it's really interesting to hear so many use cases about sharing. It's something that is really difficult, and it's a shame it's so difficult, especially as Mia was saying, you know, there's all these new tools like Exhibit and From the Page and all these different things that you really want to take the content and be able to remix it. And I come across this a lot in the training, and the first kind of part of the training is all about how to get access to a IIIF manifest. And you go to the guide site as one kind of solution that we've got, where you can go to each individual institution and see how to access a IIIF manifest, and almost every single one is different. And it's just, you know, there's so much training involved in being able to do that I'm not sure kind of an individual researcher which hasn't gone through that training is going to be able to kind of grok that at all. It's just such a difficult problem. And content state is kind of a relatively new specification, which in some ways is to allow all of that functionality, all of that way of being able to link to different viewers, being able to make it easier to get access to that manifest, being able to make it easier to transfer it from one system to another system. But I don't think it solves any of the UX problems that we're coming across, and potentially it's just going to kind of add other options. And I think if we could kind of come to some agreement where we've got kind of a common look for how this content state would work, and that users could then recognize it as a move from site to site, and they know, I've seen that before, I know how that works, and potentially, you know, we will get there. So there's some demos which I put into the chat about different kind of use cases for content state. So for example, linking through to Exhibit, so potentially you could embed that on your website. So you're looking at your manifest, and then there's a link to take it to Exhibit, take it to From the Page, take it to any other tool. Other potential ways of doing drag and drop. The really complicated ones, which are download and email, which is another interaction pattern. But again, how you kind of explain that to a user, I've got no idea. And then potentially another one is a kind of a bookmarking service, so kind of a third party where you add your manifest a bit like Leander's and detect IIIF. And that one in particular is kind of a server instance rather than a browser, but it's the same sort of idea that you kind of add your IIIF things to a bookmarking service, and then you can take it to different viewers. So the content state is part of a possible solution, but there's so much other UX questions and discussion which would need to be kind of discussed and tried.
Yeah, and I just want to add too that I think there's this layer of complication that Glenn mentioned, which is the training and awareness layer, right? So the demand for what to do with IIIF a little bit depends on how the interface presents, what options are available, what you even can do. So there's a bit of a, not a requirement necessarily, but a challenge for the interface to help the user understand in the first place that IIIF is here, or that at least you can do these functions if you don't want to focus on IIIF as the icon. And so that adds to how much can you stick into the interface to train them on the spot to be able to do these tasks versus them understanding how document viewers work and where you might find these links and things like that. All right, so I think Sarah has some additional comments to provide.
I always have additional comments. So, part of this was a response to a question Matt asked in his presentation, which is sort of, what if I don't want all this complex technical metadata in my manifest? And my first statement is, if people are not looking at the manifest itself, who cares? Go ahead and stick it there is my basic philosophy, is because I have this football analogy, right? We put a lot of stuff in our manifests. And then there's kind of a second piece, which is we use a lot of
the linking properties like related or see also or things like that. And I was wondering if you'd considered that as another way of making material that's not user visible accessible for use by your presentation framework, by your discovery framework,
by computers,
sure,
by programmers
yes,
writing things
any
against
client.
the manifest, right?
Yeah.
It's a different clients doing different things.
Right. Yeah. So that's absolutely what we're doing. We have a see also reference directly back to our API, our non-IIIF endpoint for our API, which has extensive technical metadata, other stuff that we may not want to present to a human. Going back to sort of the exploded viewer, exploded manifest concept of that Tom Crane sort of has talked a lot about, that the presentation API is sort of really intended for humans. Computers can use it, but we shouldn't assume that first, right? And so that's sort of what we're trying to do. Everything in our manifest that we're presenting to a user at a glance, or everything in our page that we're presenting to a user at a glance, we're seeing as being in a manifest. Everything that we don't necessarily want at a glance, whether it be hidden behind some tab or some modal or some other user who really wants to get into that and find that technical metadata for whatever reason, maybe it's a video, technical metadata for videos are amazingly complex sometimes. Like, they want to see that stuff doesn't need to be in the manifest. That can be on some other JSON output that is sort of referenced in a see also. Same thing for using rendering, perhaps for other supporting materials that is maybe Markdown or something else that is related to the item, but isn't necessarily shown on the screen at first, or to use some, anachronism, above the fold. At least that's the way digital above the fold might work. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any comments or thoughts from the audience? If anybody wants to jump in and share either something you posted or a general fresh comment, I'm going to start going back through the chat to pull out some questions. I see we have about 80 people here, so that's great. Anybody want to provide their own thoughts compared to something you're doing in your institution?
maybe while we're waiting, I can throw in one thought about the audio players. So I think one of the questions there, if I understood correctly, was that there are a number of different options at like different levels of like the power of users, you know, how powerful and understanding users are of things. So being able to share a clip of an audio is very cool and is available, and some people do know of it. And I don't know who said it, but you're right, not everybody is aware of this. And another general concept I would share is just, and you might already know this, it's pretty simple, is just to serve the lowest common denominator of audiences that you have. And so especially if it's going to be a struggle to get a little bit more advanced use out of a system, go ahead and give them the share for the specific recording that they're looking at, because that is going to be expected behavior. But don't worry about getting like a particular clip of an audio for people to share until that's something that becomes more possible, or until you do have a chance to talk to your users again and figure out how many are that advanced. And if you do talk to your users, or you get a survey, or you get analytics and they tell you that everybody wants to do this, obviously that's going to be very important. But until that point, I think just serving that most basic layer of users is going to serve you very well.
Thank you, Stacey. That's good, and we like simple. Simple's cheaper, so that's good.
All right, I'm perusing through the comments. Trip, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the conversation or share? I know you posted a couple questions.
Sure. I mean, my first one was just about accessibility in the context of what Matt was talking about, though other people who've got things to say about accessibility with what they're doing is interesting as well.
Yeah, I'll just go quick. I think the approach that we're taking, I'm really approaching this the way I was 3 years ago in some ways, before I entered the IIIF world, where I was a web developer working in academia, and accessibility was like basically a huge part of my job. And by coming into it and thinking about these UI components, not as IIIF components, but as UI components that users and all users need to be able to experience, it allows you to focus, really go back to the roots of web development and approaching things in a user-centric way, and not really sort of detaches you from the IIIF data model. IIIF is just the data model for serving these things. So if you're really being able to focus in on the UI side and just think about, oh, well, that image there is actually, that figure in that image or wrapping that image is really just coming from this, IIIF endpoint. Well, that's just what's serving it, but really you're still thinking accessibility first. So I think, at least from my point of view, this point of view sort of recenters your thinking and allows you to like just think of things as being just a sort of a web developer, a generic web developer. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You can be a generic web developer and be great at it. Hope that answers it.
Okay. We have about good 15 minutes for further questions and comments. I see Brittany LaPierre. It sounds like you might be a IIIF user. I'm not sure what your role is. Would you like to say hello? And
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm a developer for a Canadian organization called CRKN. We do use IIIF to represent our objects in our archive. And we're always trying to find ways of making it make sense to the researchers and the general public who use our app. So I appreciate the tips that you all are giving.
Oh, great. I'll just mention, this is going to come up at the end of the presentation when we talk about the design group meetings for the next year. But if you have any internal UX research from your institution or organization, those are some of the things we're looking for presenters to present in the future. because UX research is not so common around IIIF, right? So anytime anybody has actually done some, it's really great to share with the whole community, because it does add cost. Development is already expensive, and if you're the kind of organization that puts UX first, that's amazing, and you can save yourself some money on development, but otherwise it's usually added on after development, in which case it's an additional expense. Okay, I'm looking through comments. Josh, did you have any comments or thoughts you wanted to share while we're looking for other people?
I'm just trying to do quick answers as I can, pointing people to links to things. But no, I think this is great. From our perspective in the IIIF consortium side, like this is all amazing work, and it's sort of a nice problem to have in some ways, that like we need as a community to agree on like hewing down the universe of possibilities. But I think this is a great place for the community to be, right? Is restraining ourselves from kind of exposing all of the nuance and functionality, and deciding on a sort of evidence-based approach to what people actually use or need, or indicate that they use if they don't necessarily say it.
Yeah. Do we have any other comments from the audience? Questions? One of the things I was thinking about as comments were coming through is this idea of how invisible is IIIF versus how central is it. Some implementations really, like we saw with the Royal Society upcoming interface that's going to get launched. I love how they have this use this record block right there, and with clearly labeled IIIF icons. So for anybody who's IIIF aware, now you know this is where I go, this is what I can do. Whereas other interfaces really maybe go out of their way to not worry users about what is IIIF and just present you the functions that you can do. And so that's, I don't know if there's, it's just two different approaches. There's probably not one answer in that case. So I think we have some more comments from our panel. Stacy. No, Sarah.
No, Sarah.
Well, so what I put in, I'm trying not to talk too much because I have a tendency to, but is this idea of how do you get people to a wow moment as quickly as possible? And I think for that purpose, you focus on what do you want to do? Do you want a workspace to manipulate and annotate this image? Do you want to share this with a colleague? Do you want to transcribe this? Do you want, there are all these different things that people are doing with images. And I think it's not good for the IIIF world for that to be the focus, but it's the right thing for the users. Like, I think you don't necessarily need a IIIF logo to get people to those actions. You can drive all those actions off of IIIF. An example from our software is probably about a third of the people who import material from via IIIF are importing from Content DM. And they don't know they're using IIIF. We ask them for a Content DM item link, and then we derive the IIIF manifest from that link. And we go ahead and just pull it all in, and we do some other additional stuff as well. But, it's bad for IIIF marketing because we have all these archivists who have no clue they're using IIIF, but it gets them where they need to go really quickly, and they love it.
I see Leander has his hand raised. Thank you, Leander, for raising your hand.
Yeah, yes, and I want to thank the panelists for the comments, which remind me of the fact that we have to deal with the problem of communicating a complicated technology and make it easy to use for people who do not know how this technology actually works. And this is, I think this is a complicated thing, a complicated balance to find. And so and I just thought with the recent examples of calling it not IIIF anymore, but assigning certain use cases to it, like workspace or exhibit, then it could happen that the real benefits, the interoperability of IIIF vanishes a little bit and is not visible anymore. So then it is a piece I think I can use in a scholarly workspace, or it is a thing I can use in an exhibition, but maybe this really great feature of interoperability is not clear to the users anymore. But maybe we could accept it and consider this to be an advanced use case to know the overall interoperability later. So maybe it's still a good approach.
All right. I was just thinking, Glenn, about content state, so I'm not surprised you raised your hand.
Yeah, so I think there's been kind of long discussions about whether kind of IIIF should be kind of front and center, or it should be kind of like a background thing. And I kind of think we need both options. So the kind of integration that Leander was talking about, where you can send people to exhibit, to workspace, or straight to from the page, I think is great. But you're kind of making the decision as a publisher about what functionality is available. So I think if you just publish the IIIF link, you're also opening the world to the kind of the options that you don't know about. So say, for example, before Exhibit was widely known, you know, certain people knew Exhibit was possible, and if they had access to IIIF Manifest, then they could take your content and do stuff that you didn't know about it. So I think we kind of need both the kind of the easy on-ramp to those services that the institution kind of approves of or kind of advertises, and then also that other option where people can just take it and do something different, which you're not expecting with. So I think both we need, really.
Yeah, that's a great comment, because that's what's enabled all these other creative and innovative uses of IIIF over the past, 4 or 5, 6 years, maybe going back to 10. Do we have any final comments? I have one other person I might call out if nobody else has any comments. If you're willing, David Newberry over at the Getty, would you just share a little of your thoughts or responses here? Do we have David? Nope. I think we may have lost him.
He's on the screen.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I was just, I think, early on in the conversation commenting on how often, I think when we built out particularly the archives viewing that we were doing here, we very much went down that IIIF as the representation of the archive model. And we ended up having to move away from that because we ended up in the place where we wanted to do more things with, linking between layers or pulling up structured data around people than you could do with just the presentation data in the manifest. And so I think there's this, I think IIIF is a really powerful way to represent an item, particularly in these places where you want to do other things with it. I think it's just that we ended up with that sort of, the cautionary tale of maybe you don't want to build your entire presentation layer off what IIIF allows. It's really powerful, but by its nature, it's designed to not do things like structured data about the people and the items depicted, or really close integration with vocabularies, things that let you get richer. And so we use it on every page we build, but we use it as an augmentation. And, I think this is often, again, that difference between museum or really complex archive, where the object is really, really rich, and some of the more library or basic presentations where the intersection between what an item is and what a IIIF manifest is really close. But just something to keep in mind as you're thinking about where you want your UX to grow, because IIIF is great, but it is a presentation layer.
Thank you. All right, so I want to circle back to our presenters. Do you have any final questions that you want to pose to the community, or final comments, Matt?
No, but I just want to follow David's thoughts there. Yeah, we found out, I mean, I think I referenced it just going in, but we found a little bit, into the project that it's going to be more complex than we wanted to. I don't know if our data is fully as complex as it could be. Maybe we're entering the process a little early, but that's a great thought. And also just thanks to the panelists, and I really appreciate it also seeing the two other presentations.
Great, Leander.
Well, I just had an off-topic thought. We have to upgrade Myrtle. To React, Myrtle has to be upgraded. That's just what I thought right in this moment. Well, no. Thanks again for the conversation, and it was a good time to think about the abstraction of technology and user spaces, and gave good new input to me. Thanks to everybody.
Excellent. And our BL contingent.
Well, just thank you for the opportunity. I haven't met people from this group before. I've meant to join some of the community calls, so I will be following the conversations. And it seems like doing things simply and serving as wide an audience as possible is probably something we'll stick with for the time being. But I hope we can also do something more with the manifest or the presentation data within it. And Mia, do you want to add anything? Particularly looking forward to seeing how AV works once we move to the universal viewer stroke player next year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that go live next year. Just thank you everyone for your time and your thoughts and your perspectives. It's been, even just presenting and getting together to talk about what we could do has been helpful, but the comments have been something else in addition. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So our panelists, Stacy, any final comments or thoughts?
Nothing really coherent, just that I've also enjoyed the conversation, and it's been really great to see all of these projects and also to talk about the questions that you all have. And maybe as a final note, I'm in Slack and I'm in the design channel. And if you have any further questions that we didn't get to today, please feel free to Slack me at any time.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little promo for our upcoming meetings. Sarah and Ben.
So from my perspective, I had wrote down so many questions during the presentations that I didn't get to ask because they weren't general enough. So if any of the presenters get an email from me saying, well, how did you do this? Or what did you do about this? I apologize.
One of the things I love about this community is how collaborative it is, but that superpower can also be a weakness, and that we often wait for consensus to arrive before we make decisions, or because a decision hasn't really, or a consensus hasn't been arrived to, we kind of spread our options out and have many ways of doing things. I would encourage the people on this call to be opinionated. You may get it wrong, but put a stake in the ground, say, this is how we're going to do this, and let's see if it works. Because I think we move, I have to go back to my metaphor, the ball forward more when we put that stake in the ground and see what actually works, and people will adopt it if it works and they think it's a good decision. And maybe it doesn't, you have to go re-implement, but that's okay too, because we're still making progress.
Excellent. Yeah, be opinionated. That's a good one. I like that. All right, so I just want to take a moment to invite everyone to our 2023 community group meetings. Josh, maybe you didn't tell you yet, but we picked the third Thursday of the month for a recurring schedule for the entire year. It looks like it's going to work. So this is our intended schedule, and you should be able to find that on the IIIF calendars soon. And we're really focusing our meetings on 3 different topics. If you have some internal user research, behavior studies, et cetera, that you can share, that's amazing and extremely valuable to the community. If you have some design solutions that you're considering, you're experimenting with, testing and implementing, Matt presented for us, I think in September or October, maybe it was. And if you're just looking for feedback, so for the British Libraries, you're welcome to join us again and get a smaller group feedback on some of these things. So we invite everyone to attend and continue these conversations on Slack. And I think with that, I will pass it back to Josh to conclude.
Yep, just thank you, Ben, Stacy, Sarah, all the presenters. This has been great. This is exactly why we couldn't do this alone. We could have maybe had a conversation, but to carry that work forward, it's really the work of the IIIF community groups. So the last thing I'll say is we urge you, Ben already put this plug in, but do join us in the community groups, either the design group or if there's another one that's of interest. I put the community call calendar in there. They're open to all, so join us. There's usually meetings roughly once a month or at most every 2 weeks. So thanks for joining. That's it for today. We do have more on the online meeting tomorrow and on Thursday. But we'll wrap this up here. We'll end the Zoom session for the day. Yeah, and we're so grateful for your attention, for your energy, for your interest in all things IIIF. And have a great evening, afternoon, whatever it may be for you. We'll see you on Slack and in the rest of the meeting. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.